Hagerstown, Maryland is not just dealing with a crime wave, it's the epicenter of Maryland's addiction and homelessness crisis. Washington County's overdose rate has been more than double the state average, and the per capita homeless rate far outpaces the rest of Maryland. Tonight on Mid-Maryland Votes, we dig into how the federal opioid settlement fund should be spent. Should it go towards Narcan and a clean needle exchange, or boots on the ground recovery efforts? Joining us is Bill, director of the True North Recovery House in Hagerstown, Maryland, and Hagerstown City Councilman Sean Flaherty, for a hard look at what's really needed to turn this city around. Now let's get into it. Welcome to Mid-Maryland Votes. I am your host, Mark Flynn. With me, as always, is my co-host,
Ethan Lowen. And this evening, we have two very special guests. One is Sean Flaherty from the City Council of Hagerstown. Good evening to you tonight.
Thanks for having me.
And the second is someone new to this podcast. It is Bill Johns, the executive director of True North, which is a recovery facility and for addicts that are becoming sober, and also for reintroducing them back into the community as a working, participating citizens. Good evening to you as well.
Good evening to you.
Bill, can you tell us a little bit about True North, the program, where it started, and what you do with it?
Right. True North is an organization that supplies a sober house living organization for the day reporting center and for adult drug court. We work closely with gatekeepers in Hagerstown. We work and network with all the sober houses and 3.1 treatment centers throughout the Washington County, Hagerstown area and through the region.
Do you happen to know how many there are?
There's roughly 20 in the area. We have a huge amount of resources in Washington County. We're rich with sober housing and treatment centers, and but short on shelter.
Shelter being a place that the people wanting to get sober actually can live.
Well, someone that's homeless or unhoused in Hagerstown for whatever reason can go into a shelter if the sober houses are full.
And do you find that a lot of your homeless and housing insecure are addicts or alcoholics or have a drug and alcohol issue?
Yes,
What percentage would you estimate?
85%,
And how about mental health issues as well?
90%.
And so your True North helps out in what ways?
We mostly help with the sober housing in the area. Even if it's not my house, I make sure people coming out of jail and prison, those that are unhoused, get to housing, whether it's my house or not.
So my understanding is that True North has its own sober facility where people can come off the streets and become sober.
Yes,
And also that you help facilitate other sober houses in the area finding shelter and programs for people who want to come off the streets and want to become sober.
yes. My concept is to make sure that people are placed in sober housing only because it's supervised. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be suffering from some sort of substance dependency. I want to make sure that people are given an opportunity to be supervised by someone that's trained to assess their needs. Then I transport them to the place that's best for them, even if it's not in this area.
How many employees do you have at True North?
Just myself and one other.
So you're doing a lot of work.
We do.
How many people can be inside your facility comfortably?
8.
8.
In addition to, I live there too.
And I'm assuming that you're full most of the time.
Yes.
And so, Sean, you're with the town council. I'm sorry, the city council of Hagerstown. And Ethan wants to introduce the concept of what we're going to be talking about tonight as far as funding goes.
Yes, and so something quite large has occurred recently, and that is where the settlement funds related to OxyContin and the opioid epidemic that's come about over the last 15 or so years, where the prescription of OxyContin has participated in that. And so there was a very large lawsuit against the company, the producer of OxyContin, and of the billions of dollars that was included in the settlement, it's kind of getting dispersed amongst the states, and now it is being dispersed amongst the counties. And now is the time where decisions are being made about how best to spend it. And you, Sean, as one of the members of the city council, and also the county commissioners all across the state are kind of entering this debate. And of course, Bill here is someone who is running one of the organizations that could be a potential recipient. But on top of that, just another side note in regards to Bill and what he does is he is one of the nonprofits that has a very high success rate at where people do become sober in his program. They do kick the habit. They do re-enter society. And so there's a lot of success. The other thing I'll note is that if you talk to people who are other executive directors of nonprofits that deal with this issue, pretty much all of them will at some point in the conversation lead back to Bill. So it not just is he doing successfully in his program, he is also a leader in the community on this issue. And so we're very excited to talk about that this evening. One other thing I would add is that there's another source of money, which is that the sales taxes from the sale of marijuana is also being dispersed for the same reason and purpose as the disbursement of the OxyContin settlement money.
Do we know how much money we're talking about here? Dollars and cents? Sean, do we know?
No, I don't. I mean, there's different figures. I looked at some of the emails on what we're getting on there, but we're not getting as much from both those settlements as I thought we originally would have. So I think the county's probably going to be taking most of that money.
Is it regulated by law? What percentage can be taken by each agency as it works its way down to the city?
I think it shall give the city. It's not, they have to give the city from what I know. I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head the percentage of how much they have to give the city on that, but you know, I'm not really expecting a ton from what I was told. The city council, we have talks on what we can do with that money, you know, and you know, like Bill's organization and things like that. There's a lot of potential what we could do with that, because you know, as Hagerstown, we've been most disproportionately affected by the drug war, you know, especially with fentanyl and opioids and everything else that's going on here. So you know, it's really getting back to the county and having that conversation about what we would like to do with that money. You know, I know we have the city court building we're talking about. We're still in talks with the county to do that. We were talking about, you know, they have a crisis person at Meritus, but we would like to see them come out more here on site in the city instead of being at Meritus. So there's a lot of talk of avenue of where we're going to spend that, but there's no clear cut, you know, from the city amongst ourselves what we're going to completely do.
Is there any guidelines on what it's supposed to be spent on, or is it pretty much left up to the municipalities and the local government?
There are guidelines.
What are they? What are they, Bill? Do you
In
know?
order to use the money, you have to agree to make the money reduce opioid overdoses.
So it has to have a direct impact on opioid overdoses.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so, but that's still, you know, I think to Sean's point, a lot of people can say, well, this would have a direct effect, this would have a direct effect, and who's going to hold them accountable?
Well, essentially what happens is that there is criteria put in place. And so one of the things is that the money that is going to the county commissioners, they do have to spend it within the 2 zip codes that make up Hagerstown. Now, what the issue is in part is that some of those zip codes are outside of the city of Hagerstown. So not all of it is necessarily going to end up even from the county commissioners pile. And of course, Hagerstown is kind of the epicenter of the drug trade, of the homeless crisis, of the criminal activity and the crime that we've talked about a number of times. But it essentially what happens is, my understanding with the guidelines, as Bill was saying, is that it does first and foremost have to reduce overdoses, which essentially means harm reduction is the term that's used. And so those needles exchange programs that reduce the number of hepatitis, the spread of hepatitis amongst the homeless community as they're using drugs, or the spread of HIV, and then also Narcan in the advent that someone does overdoses. Of course, what the huge controversy is that means that by prioritizing that, it then leaves less money, and a lot less money, for other programs such as preventing addictions in the first place, or when someone does reach their bottom, which is a term that is oftentimes used in the recovery community, helping them then recover and become members of the community again. And so there's just less money there for those purposes.
So critiques of the program would say that if the money goes towards clean needles and Narcan, it's not really treating the problem; it's treating the symptoms. How would you categorize that, Bill?
I would categorize harm reduction policy in general as the only evidence-based data that we have for actually being able to show that this reduces opioid overdoses. The things that can be done beyond that, if, for example, opioid overdoses are reduced by the use of Narcan, that, of course, is part of the idea. Opioid overdoses are being reduced by the use of Narcan and harm reduction policies, which have to do with the free needles and the paraphernalia that's given so that someone isn't shooting up with something that's going to kill them. Now, when I get there, they get the kit and they get the Narcan and they go and use, and they'll come back. Sometimes they'll call me and I'll take them back to the health department and so on. Otherwise, they'll come back to the health department for more. If they get into that habit, that does keep them from getting sick and dying in most cases because they have both the kit and the Narcan. Most folks that are representing the constituents here in Washington County and Hagerstown don't want to do that because everybody's upset about the trash, the needles on the ground, the public safety issues, and the health issues that come from that. But to get the money and to use the money, then I would say it's okay for us to agree to harm reduction policies and the use of Narcan so that we can start doing things like investing in supervised housing, supervised transportation, increasing the amount of mental health treatment that we can offer our people, and transportation to get them to the places where they need to go. We need an investment in a day center. We could get everybody off the street or take them home.
And you bring up a very interesting point there because, of course, that leads directly into what is, I would say, the largest point of contention right now, which is the homeless ordinance that the City Council of Hagerstown put into place. And Councilman Flaherty, you are one of the largest proponents of that. Let me ask you, what was your thought with supporting the homeless ordinance?
Well, it was an anti-camping ordinance, but we don't arrest folks for being homeless. That's a completely disproportionate, false representation that folks are doing that online. Since this ordinance has passed, not one person's been arrested. And on top of that, we only arrest them if they refuse to leave public property. And in the day, taxpayers don't want to see urine-filled benches and needles everywhere. And, and there's services and things to help folks. And I get it. You can take the horse to the water. You can't make them drink it. But eventually, like blue cities like San Francisco and others, they're cracking down on that. And they're saying, hey, you either get treatment or help or you go to jail. You can't do either. So at the end of the day, this idea of compassion, we've been compassionate. There's plenty of programs out there, and Bill's program is one of them. But then as a taxpayer, I don't believe we should become Portland or San Francisco. And they have a lot of lawlessness in those cities with policies that completely just exacerbate that behavior and makes it worse.
And what you bring up is really a key point, and I think the contention of the entire debate is the kind of the pull back and forth between compassion and consequences leading to improvement. And what I mean by that is that, so what you're saying is that, we need to have an attitude in Hagerstown, a message from the government saying that, look, this level of crime, this per capita crime that puts us amongst the top 10%, or in some cases even the top 5% nationally for the amount of crime per person, this can no longer be accepted. Now, so, and really, Sean, what you're bringing up is a huge point of contention in the debate between compassion versus what helps people get results and helps them. Bill, there is a story you had told me where we were talking once, and as an example of the discussion we were having, you had mentioned a conversation that had occurred between two homeless individuals that kind of capture this contention that the city council is dealing with currently. Do you remember what I'm referring to?
There is a shelter in Hagerstown that does not take anybody if they're using or drunk or high. So essentially, when this conversation was going on between the two people, one wanted to go into the place where he could use all the time. The other was one that I was willing to take into my house because he does not want to use anymore, and he's willing to go into the Hope Shelter. I only take in people that are ready to change. So I place people in other houses, shelter first, 3.1 treatment next, sober housing next, and then when they get to my house, which is a true transition house, then we prepare them to save some money, go to work, get back with the family, get straightened up to a place where they can afford to sustain themselves and the family independently. Mm-hmm. The health department is located up on Pennsylvania Avenue, just above where it becomes changes from Burhan's to Pennsylvania Avenue. In that big shopping center, the health department's taken over the majority of it, but not all of it. There's a large section of that shopping center that's still not being used. I'm an advocate for the use of that area that's not being used because the health department's already there. The needles, the kits, the Narcan, the training, the counselors, the caseworkers are already there. Wix is there. And I'm thinking that the utilization of that space would be adequate for the amount of people that are in need of help there, and open up a day center for people to get their assessments done there, have some food for them, things to do, and caseworkers to assess their needs. Then supervised transportation could bring them from there to wherever they need to go from that point, even if it's to another place outside of the region.
Another part of that conversation that when you were telling me about it that really caught my attention was that the one person who, as you described, was not ready to get sober.
Right.
He was explaining to the person who did want sobriety. He said, it is great out here on the streets. Unlike where you're staying in the Hope Shelter, because you can do whatever you want out here. In the Hope Shelter, you have to be clean.
That's correct.
And just as you were saying earlier in the conversation, where 85% of the homeless that, in your experience, are addicts, is that the criticism of the harm reduction, while certainly the concept is a good concept, but what critics have pointed out is that the hard truth, and I believe this is a hard truth if it is correct, but what they have pointed out is that when you simply have this emphasis on the harm reduction programs, such as this opioid settlement money and this marijuana sales tax money seems to emphasize, is that it actually increases the amount of drug use in the community. It doesn't reduce it at all. And it does not even seem to be keeping it the same. It seems to lead to an almost enabling process that increases the use of drugs in the community. What is your thought on that?
The enabling part, you're very correct about, right? When we go about allowing people to continue to use, that's meeting someone where they are and keeping them there. My interest is to make sure that we're on a pathway to abstinence and to independent living, and if we can get them on that path, if we can. If we can't, and they have a mental health issue or physical issue or medical issues in general that keep them from being able to go to work, then we need to get them to the services that are qualified to help them there. In the sober house, the treatment centers and the shelters, we're not qualified to deal with that portion of the population that we serve. The Department of Social Services helps us considerably with families and children. They help us with funding. They help us with all sorts of things that we can help people with. But normally we're not helping people get better. Mm-hmm. We're helping them stay where they are, right? What I'd like to use this money for, if it's possible, is to create methods of being able to encourage people to change on a gradual basis, working with professional people in supervised environments until they get to a place where they're truly ready to become contributing citizens again.
Do you have a statistic based on the number of individuals that have gone through your home? And I believe you've done this for close to 10 years now. Do you have a statistic on the percentage of people going through your home that do continue on with a life of sobriety and being reintroduced as participating members of the community?
It fluctuates between 60 and 70% of the people that come to my house. But please remember this. I'm picky. Mm-hmm. I choose the people that are ready to change by asking them first to go through all the other facilities in the area before they get to my home. And when they get to my house, then around about 60 to 70% of the folks that come to me who are going the full 8 months to a year that I recommend, and longer sometimes, they make it back to independent living.
Way higher than most supervised living facilities.
Absolutely.
I think the recidivism rate for most of those facilities is 80%
Oh, yes.
return to using.
Absolutely.
Most of
So the
them
fact that
that
you're getting
number.
60 to 70% off the streets and clean is absolutely phenomenal, Bill. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Sean, what is the inclination for the town council or the city council there in Hagerstown as far as where this funding might go? Is it going to be in these harm reduction programs or more into the programs that seem to have more success, which is the type of program that Bill is supervising?
Well, I know I personally would, support programs that have real high success like Bill's. I would not be in favor of the harm reduction of free needles and more Narcan. And you're just putting a Band-Aid on a problem. You're not actually resolving it.
And also, as Bill said, that's already funded.
Yeah, and a lot of folks also get the misconception that the city and the county are even giving out the free needles. It's really the state that's doing all that. And we don't really have a leeway on how to stop that. So it's not, and they all come to our town to do it. So, we've talked about a crisis center. We've talked about other avenues of how to spend it. Like, I think there's a crisis person emeritus. So, we kind of wanted a one-stop shop for services and things like that for everybody to come to. And I even like Bill's suggestion about using the rest of, where the Washington County Health Department is. And I definitely would be very supportive of having the money go to places where there's been a high successive rate. I don't support, making their problems worse by giving them more tools for their addiction. So, and we already have many programs here downtown. And, I remember last year, I guess it was 2 years ago, I watched a city council meeting where a woman was homeless in California, and she chose to move to Hagerstown because she said, "You guys have the great programs here." And I'm somebody that I don't want that type of person coming to my town. And I'm not trying to be mean when I say that, but it's like we want high skilled workers. We want people that are going to contribute to our city's economy. We want people that are going to do things for us here, not just take advantage of the things we have and just do drugs all the time and let us, the taxpayers, put the bill, because that's what we're going to do.
To let someone go out on the street and shoot up is not a good idea. I'm thinking that a center that has professional people surrounding the individuals that are using, we're not going to get everybody to come do this, by the way. We're only going to get those who are willing to come in, right? And those that will cooperate will probably cooperate with whatever they're told. The ones that won't are the ones that we need to talk to with that LEAD program, if you're familiar.
Yeah.
Where we do have a lead individual out of the Potomac Community
Can you
Services.
explain the LEAD program to our viewers, please?
Okay. I will.
Yes, please.
Okay. The LEAD program initially was law enforcement assisted diversion, where the law enforcement people would go out with people like myself. There's Mr. Best that works at the Homeless Coalition. He goes out into the community and talks to people and asks them to come in. We have a number of others that work at the Potomac Community Services and others at the social services and so on that contribute to the program we call LEAD that has now changed. It's now been taken over by the health department. So right now, nothing's happening with LEAD. But we do have another Homeless Coalition meeting on the 13th of November, where I understand we're going to talk about this again, and hopefully we'll kick off the LEAD program again.
Is that meeting open to the public?
That meeting is open to the public.
And what date is it?
It's the 13th of November at I've never been there before, but it's the Red Cross building, wherever that is.
Okay.
Okay.
And what's this seminar called, or what is this?
It's a meeting it's a regular meeting of the Homeless Coalition, and Homeless Coalition is operated by the Community Action Council.
We'll put a link to it in our comments section.
And one of the things is that we know there have been other communities that have fallen into this, where they put forth these policies that have allowed crime and the drug trade and therefore the homeless population to increase, and they pulled themselves out of it. Unfortunately, it's not a convincingly high number, an encouragingly high number, but it does exist. And just across state lines in West Virginia, We can see what the Panhandle of West Virginia did, where their homeless population decreased precipitously. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it happened at a very similar time that our homeless population in Washington County jumped. And so we know that there are programs that work. I mean, just there are programs out there on a number of fronts that have such high success. And so really it's who is going to take on the fight for spending this money where it is changing people's lives, and balancing out what is compassion but not enabling. Certainly not easy. And obviously, Bill, you are doing the hard work, which we all appreciate. I mean, I think you deserve appreciation from everyone for how you've improved the community. And Sean, for your role on the council, having to make those decisions. I don't envy you the competing goals and issues that you have to balance out when making those decisions.
Actually might get more federal money because when Trump did his recent, executive order that addressed the homelessness and, crime and drugs, there could be some other programs that the city we are looking into right now where we would qualify since we passed the anti-camping ordinance. So there's some money we're going to qualify for. We're hoping to get that. The only thing is some of the recipients of the money, they don't want a lot of the DEI language within their organization and what they're going to do with that. So I'm not sure, we might have to clean that up with the city. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but because of Trump's executive order, we might be able to get some more federal funds our way.
So what is the front line of this fight for this money? Is there something that Bill and other activists who are working in the community can do to increase the likelihood that they get funded from these monies?
Yeah, like I said, I don't know at the top of my head when that's going to actually, the date of when that's going to be out. I know talking with the mayor, we talked about it about a week or two ago about the money. I think the county was holding a lot of it. So again, I was told the amount we're probably going to get is not going to be much. Bill's organization, there's a lot of great ideas of how to fix things. I think we can all agree on that what's been working hasn't worked for a long time within the city. And we've had a lot of policymakers and folks that, they haven't had the right direction on doing that. I mean, we had the former mayor of, Hagerstown. She's now the opioid response director, but she couldn't fix the problem here. So it just, I think we need a new set of eyes on how to handle this. And like you mentioned, West Virginia is a great example. There's a lot of other great municipalities and states that have done wonderful things we can emulate and mirror that. But I think it goes back to a political will to do that. And I do think the city's on a good course to want to tackle that now from the previous administration. I don't remember seeing, Hagerstown had rough areas, but I don't remember seeing nearly as bad as what I've seen now with the drugs and homeless. And it's like the Walking Dead downtown sometimes. And I hate to say that. I can even go into the parking garage under the city hall building because there was a guy completely high on drugs defecating right in front of the garage door there. So I literally, go to the Elizabeth Hager Center to park. But this is an issue that the residents here have seen long and hard. The businesses are not happy with, a lot of the previous responses and action we've done that on. So, and I'd like to take a lot of those resources and things outside of the city limit so they don't all want to come here. Again, we should share the burden proportionally throughout the county, not just Hagerstown.
So if I go out and I meet with one person that's willing to get in the van with me, to get one person, all of us together, just get one person a day, right? 365 days later, we put a dent in this thing. Together, if we get together, get those people together, the ones I just mentioned, the leaders in the community, the people with the best result, together with the health department. So if we can get together the experts in the field, that in this local field that we serve, right? But to make sure that they're led into a program where they can get the help they need in order to come off the street and be healthy people.
That coalition that you're talking about of people, in the agencies and law enforcement, health department, that's something that I think that we all as residents of this area can work towards. Well, Bill, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Sean, thank you so much for being with us. We're looking forward to maybe having you guys back on when these funds are distributed and we can talk more about this very important topic.
That we can put together a plan that will really work for us here in Washington County and Hagerstown.
Well, good luck with that plan. Hey, Sean, thank you again for being with us. My name is Mark Flynn. Thank you for being with us tonight. With me, as always, is my co-host,
Ethan Lowen.
and we'll encourage you to tune in again next time. Thank you for joining Mid-Maryland Votes. Tonight's conversation made one thing very clear. Hagerstown's crisis won't improve unless people step up and get involved. I want to thank our guests, Councilman Sean Flaherty and Bill from True North Recovery House. Bill may see himself as just an ordinary man, but out on the streets, meeting people where they are, he's changing lives, one addict, one homeless neighbor at a time. That's real courage, and it's the kind of work that makes a difference. Thanks for listening to Mid-Maryland Votes. Like, follow, and share for more content like this. And join us next time as we continue tackling the issues that matter most to our community.